What drives the desire to solve puzzles? To pick a lock? To answer a riddle? For me, it has always been the rules. Let's face it, life is chaotic and messy, often devoid of logic altogether. Say you walk across the same street every day for 2 months to your favorite coffee shop, the one right across the street from your job. That's 120 crossings, give or take, depending on the month, and then wham, that 121st time you get plowed over by a 1973 station wagon driven by a drunk driver in the middle of the day. It makes no sense. Logic says that every single time you cross that street, you get coffee. Chaos says fuck no, you get a sparsely attended funeral and a $6,000 box to be buried in. But the puzzle, in its most perfect form, gives the same result time and time again. Without fail, it follows the rules in which its existence was created. It is only when we introduce a variable to this simple equation that things go wrong. Sometimes horribly, horribly wrong. I'm getting ahead of myself, though, or am I backtracking well beyond the confines of this current situation? It's hard to be sure. I told you I lied, and I'm not the only one. First, I promised updates on the Carter family, Joseph, Annie, Oscar, and June. Since I never gave their names out of maintaining a level of privacy, impossible now. With the news stations involved, are still quite missing. Gone like AOL's mailbox discs, like Friday nights at Blockbuster, like New Coke or Crystal Pepsi. The stuff of myths, things the current generation shrugs off as an unreality because, looking back at them, they made no sense at all. Blips on the pop culture radar that are now nothing more than urban legends. Were it not for the overwhelming evidence of their existence, I'd say that weren't real at all. The police officer who has been feeding me updates, Brady, told me that they have another daughter. Maggie is 29 and lives in Phoenix, far away from this insane situation that I find myself in the middle of. He gave me her phone number, but I haven't worked up the courage needed to call it. Mostly because, well, I think this is all my fault. It was an offhanded comment on my tale that threw me for a loop, and led to this confession. Hell, I should have known better. If a random faceless stranger on the internet could see it, of course the police will find out. Especially after they search Rachel's apartment. So here it is, the unadulterated truth, Rachel and I are seeing each other. Or, more precisely, we're seeing one another. It was brief, but it happened. I knew from the moment I hired her that there was a level of attraction there. It didn't take long for us to exchange numbers and start meeting up outside of work for coffee. Later, we met for other things, as well. I'm not proud of it, and I knew I was jeopardizing my year-long relationship with my boyfriend just by being in her presence. But it was intoxicating, that itch you just can't help but scratch. Like poison ivy. But it spreads, doesn't it? Until you can't stop scratching, until your fingers betray your logical mind and act of their own accord. Being with Rachel was like that. Until the poison spread out of control. A week ago, I ended it. The guilt was simply too much to bear any longer. Devin would never understand, and I couldn't explain it, so it had to be finished. Rachel took it well enough, or so I believed. Made myself believe. It was easier than the alternative. But the truth is, I knew I caused her pain. I just didn't know quite how much. The rules. Always the damnable rules. They are in place for a reason, to keep the order of the universe. And violating them has consequences, some known, others, not so much. Brady told me. I didn't see it, didn't think to see it. That Oscar Carter was wearing a jacket sporting the same name as the college Rachel attends. See, they were friends. Pretty close, as I understand it. Close enough for her to violate the non-disclosure agreement that all employees of my escape room must sign upon hiring. I introduced a variable to the perfect design and this is the result. I'm sure the tapes will confirm this, that Rachel gave them the answers to escaping Inferno. What does it mean? Another violation of the rules, that's what. And why? Well, it was personal. Inferno was my baby, my unbeaten gift to the world. What better way to get back at me than to destroy something I loved in a way that I couldn't love her? Fuck, in a way that I also didn't even love Devin. Love is messy and illogical. The rooms, though, they were simple and rational, cerebral in their creation. Of the mind, not the heart. And Inferno was perfect, true poetry in motion. It had to be destroyed to hurt me. I've heard that Rachel is being held down at the station still. She might be incoherent, but I know now that it will all come out. And I'll have to live with whatever happens as a result. I'm just sorry that others had to end up paying my fare on the bus to hell, which as it turns out isn't paved with good intentions, but instead with the shattered code of order. The rules. I haven't been able to sleep since seeing Rachel in my room, if that makes things any better. It wasn't just the shock of, possibly, seeing her twisted, malevolent form. There's also the auditory component. Whenever I close my eyes, I hear those huge thuds again. Like giant steps approaching. I don't want to think about what it might be, so I'm stuck believing that it must be my conscience manifesting. Something is manifesting. That guilt is palpable. I spent the night poring over the electronic records of all the purchases made while designing and setting up the Inferno room, all the while keeping a wary eye on the corners of my room, partly to keep my mind occupied, partly out of remorse, and mostly, I admit this to you freely, dear reader, because there is another puzzle there. Like Rachel's hurt in Oscar's jacket, it was right in front of my eyes all this time, yet I couldn't see it, the connection to Alpine Oddities and Pawn. I started out designing Inferno with a shopping list of sorts, a general rundown of items that I wanted included in the room. Some I acquired myself either at stores, yard sales, or in the trash lining the streets every week. You wouldn't believe some of the things people throw out, honestly, while other pieces were purchased by the owner. On multiple trips. To Alpine. In fact, as far as I can tell, she never shopped anywhere else for the room. This part of the story, I'm afraid, I don't have the answer to. Tomorrow, I hope to find out. I need to call her, to find out what is going on at the business. I believe the police still have it locked down, though I'm not sure where else they could possibly look. Seems pretty obvious that the Carter family isn't there any longer. I also plan to make a trip to the store because some of these items are troubling. The old chest, for one. The torture rack that we repurposed, for another. A certain stone tablet engraved with a familiar Latin phrase. Those, along with about 15 other pieces. That can't just be a coincidence, can it? I'm probably grasping at straws here, trying to deflect some of the blame from myself. It's simpler than that, though, I promise you. Someone once said that the unconscious mind writes poetry when left alone. The truth is that what an unoccupied mind really does is eat itself. Emptiness is ravenous, all-consuming. It has a mouth like the apparition of Rachel that appeared in my room, I'm sure. I must not fall into that void if there's any way that I can help the Carters, Rachel, and myself. If this were an escape room, I'd approach it in much the same way. Research, observe, decode. Escape. There has to be a clue to this terrible reality, some way to bring everything back into order. I feel a tickle in the back of my mind and only time will tell if that feeling is just another itch, or a plan. It grows late. The shadows are gathering once more, waiting with hungry mouths all around me. Sometimes they are black clouds, sometimes they were perverted faces of those we care about. I'm going to try to make it through the night with all these guests keeping me company. The rules. The fucking rules, friend. Keep to them and live. Stray, and who knows where you may end up. Let me say, from the point of view of a logical being such as myself, I've never had the need for the supernatural. It exists outside the bounds of my comprehension. I've always searched for the reasonable explanation, the drafty window, the wisp of cigarette smoke in the camera lens, the refusal to consider mental illness in the cases of possession. These things make sense to me. I understand their origin. This door, though. It wasn't there before. And now it is. It's as simple and as complicated as that. The space between the two windows in my living room has always been occupied by a movie poster from 2000, the one starring Jennifer Lopez as a psychologist. Don't ask me why, I've just always had it there. And now, it's gone, replaced by a plain black door that has been aged to appear much older than it really is. A door I know very well. The entrance to the Inferno room. Complicating matters is that I live on the 4th floor, and that wall is bordering the front of the building. I can look out both windows and the world outside seems normal. It is just in here that things have changed drastically. And to make it all worse, the door hums. Not like someone who doesn't know the words to a song, oh no, it's more along the lines of the electricity powering your TV screen in an otherwise completely silent room. That might not be overly concerning under normal circumstances. These are far from normal, obviously, but the hum is so high-pitched that it almost sounds like distant screams. Hell, maybe that's exactly what it is. All bets are off at this point. I should probably explain more, and I promise I will, once I cover the other findings that occurred earlier today. I need to get it all down because there might not be another chance to tell this story. Before the door, there was Alpine Oddities and Pawn. The place where the business owner, Nancy, made those purchases? Let's just say it lived up to its name. The store itself is situated in the warehouse district of downtown, in a rather unassuming brick building that used to house a shoe factory, From the outside, it looks just like any other building you've probably driven by a million times without it turning a second glance. Stepping inside, though, let me say that even with everything else going on right now, I was surprised and pleased. It called out to my inner history buff, and was much like walking into a well-designed escape room itself. A small bell chimed as the door opened, ushering me into another world. A world I was accustomed to, antiques haphazardly lined up all around, creating narrow aisles that seemed warm and inviting to me, though, were you to ever find yourself there, I would not recommend bringing small children along. Taxidermy pieces hung from the walls, a bear head, ducks of all types, even a kitschy jackalope near the old-fashioned cash register that would have made an excellent addition to a retro diner with a 50s theme. See, even with all this other crazy shit, my mind still goes directly to design. It's a blessing and a curse. The man behind the counter greeted me with a disinterested grunt, and looked just like someone had decided to dress up a skeleton in vaguely realistic human garb. His skin was thin and yellowed, like parchment. Perched on his nose was a pair of glasses without the earpieces, the kind that pinch directly onto your face. Apologies, the name escapes me at the moment, and this hum is so distracting. He wore a sweater of many colors, one that I'd guess was hand-knitted. I decided to lead off as straightforward as I could. Excuse me, I work for Nancy. Without looking up, he waved a hand dismissively in my general direction. Tell her the shipment was delayed. Next week. I'm not here to pick up anything, I admitted. I wanted to ask about some of the purchases she made for the new escape room. Which one? She owns 7. He finally looked up, and his eyes were akin to a vulture circling roadkill. I don't know you. I gave him my name, holding out my hand. You misunderstand me. I don't want to know you, nor do I want to shake your hand, he said, busying himself once more. I assume you can find your own way out. I dropped my rejected hand. There are people missing. He chuckled, a sound that was both dry and humorless. It reminded me of shuffling papers. Look, friend. People go missing all the time, thousands of them. It's none of my concern. Now, I would appreciate it if you would leave. I'll be back, I said, a promise I knew was empty. Maybe the police would, but not me. The bell chimed a final time as I exited. Driving back to my apartment, I took the long route, knowing it would take me past the escape room I'd begun to think of as my second home. I parked along the street in front of the building, noting the yellow lines of police tape that were its new decorations. I couldn't help but wonder if the press would be good or bad for the business. That wasn't my problem any longer. I'd already sent a message to Nancy that morning letting her know that I resigned from my position as manager. As I sat there absently staring, my phone lit up. The area code was from Arizona, Phoenix to be exact. Shit. The sister. Reluctantly, I answered. You have to find them. No greeting, no small talk. Right to the point. Needless to say, I liked Maggie Carter instantly. I'm trying, was all I could say. But was I? What have I been doing since their disappearance, other than hiding in my apartment? Very little. Her voice was calm and clear, like still water at dawn. Do whatever you have to. I have money, quite a lot of it. You got them into this, now you get them out. I'm flying in tomorrow. Can we meet? Of course. Good, she said. Give me your address. I did. Just like that, she was gone without a goodbye. I didn't blame her. But I also knew that particular meeting would never happen. I still had my keys to the building, and I'd already decided to return that night. The best laid plans, or so they say. It was mid-afternoon when I got home. It was mid-afternoon when the foundations of my reality suffered a complete pole reversal. It was mid-afternoon when the door appeared in a place where no door should exist. Now, I'm not a big drinker, but I have no problem admitting to you, dear reader, that the first thing I did upon entering my apartment and seeing that fucking door was march to the kitchen, retrieve an almost forgotten bottle of Jim Beam from the top of the cabinets, and take a hearty dose. It burned on the way down, and that was fine with me. Not content with just one, I grabbed a set of 6 shot glasses that sat on top of my refrigerator since last Christmas and brought them, along with the bottle, into the living room. I averted my eyes from the door as I poured each one full and lined them up like toy soldiers. One, I said under my breath, downing the first of my mini-army. I approached the door and placed my hand against it, mostly to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. Its rough wooden surface assured me that I was not. It was warm. And it throbbed. 2. Another man down. I tried the handle, which to my relief didn't budge. Wasn't there some measure of disappointment there, as well? Indeed. I am working on being honest with you, so there's no point in denying it. Privates 3 and 4 went down much smoother than their predecessors. I'd say it was right about then that I noted the screaming, humming sound coming from Inferno's mysterious door. I placed my ear against it, finding the warmth both disgusting and somehow comforting, and held my breath. Nothing. Not at first. Then I heard, distantly, a noise building from a great depth behind that door. It was like paper being shuffled, at first just a few pieces, then millions. That laugh. That fucking man's laugh. Something hit the other side of the door hard. I fell back, down amongst the scattered corpses of my fallen soldiers. I waited. I counted to 5, covering my eyes. Hey, it worked with Rachel. The door was still there but, thankfully, that crashing sound didn't come again. FF5, I stuttered, lifting another shot to my lips. I was definitely beginning to feel the effects of the alcohol, but when my ringtone went off again I knew I wasn't imagining it. Caller unknown flashed over and over on the screen. I didn't want to, but I knew I had to answer it. Rachel's familiar voice greeted me with an even more familiar phrase, abyssus abyssum invocate. Then, without pause, a dequatio intellectus et re. The line went dead. 6, I muttered to the emptiness. It's been hours since that call, and I've spent them sitting in this chair facing the Inferno door. At first my new friend Jim Beam dulled the sound of the hum somewhat. Now that he's out of my system, it's almost unbearable to listen to. But I must. See, a few hours ago the knocking began. Something is on the other side, waiting for me. Hell invokes hell. I know that to be true. Now, I wrote all this down for you, not only as my confession, but as a warning. The hour draws near, and I can feel the second hand choking the minute hand. And the room is hungry. There's one part of the story I neglected to tell you, so here it is. Brady called me this morning, before my trip to Alpine. They rushed the DNA results at the lab for the blood they found on Rachel when she came back. It's me. Of course it was me. How Rachel came to be covered in my blood, I don't know. But like I said, the room is hungry. And I'm its next meal. That's why I knew I'd never return to Alpine, why I'd never meet with Maggie, and why I had to get this last bit down. The rules say the story must be told. I can only hope that my sacrifice will restore the others. Tick, tick. The knife is already sitting beside the empty bottle next to me. I told you that the door requires blood to be opened, right? At midnight, it's my turn to play. It will be an escape, one way or another.